Hey everyone, I'm doing my John Maxwell. I'm not going to do another chapter of the Napoleon Hill book, but I'm just going to continue with this 21 qualities of leaders in the Bible, developing leadership traits inspired by men and women of the scripture. So I did read the scripture, and it's 2 Chronicles 29, 1 to 11 and 15 to 36, and 2 Chronicles 31, 20 to 21. So King Hezekiah becomes king when he's 25 years old, which means that he's still young, similar to when Queen Elizabeth became queen. She was very young. And so it's just asking us some questions about the scripture. It says, at what point in his reign did King Hezekiah initiate his actions related to the restoration of the temple? What significance does that timing hold? And so the scriptures tell us it was in the first year of his reign, and the first month of his reign, he opened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. And what is important about that is that he put God first. His aim was to focus on God's temple first in his reign, in his kingdom. And you'll find that in our church too, they'll have the New Year's Mass, and they'll have that first offering where they ask us to give something towards the church. And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be 50 cents, it can be 10 cents, it can be $1. But we always try to give something in that first offering, in this first month of January, because it's significant. And it does tell us that here in Chronicles 2:29, verse 3, in the first month of the first year of his reign, he opened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. So it doesn't matter what we give, as long as we give something. And it's a way of opening up the year. It's a way of giving towards restoring God's temple in our own lives and restoring our church. And you find that he did that. And it's significant because if we look at restoring God's temple first and putting God first, everything else falls into place. When I get my jobs, my roles, whatever it is, whether it's a contract role or a permanent job or whatever it is, I always give thanks to God first, and I make a small offering in the church. I'll light my candle at home and I'll say thank you to God, and then I'll do something in the church. I'll give a small offering in the church, because for me, work is a blessing that comes from God, and I'm always grateful for that work that I get, and putting God first. And then the second one is, how much would the priests and Levites have known about Hezekiah at that time? Why do you think they followed him? So I think for kings and queens, people know them. And, they would have known who he was. They would have followed him out of his authority, out of his leadership. They would have followed him and listened to him because he was the king. And he was respected and respectable. You'll find that sometimes kings and queens are not followed and they're not respected. But in this, the passage shows us how they followed him, how they listened to him, and how they wanted to do right by the Lord. The next question is, what evidence do you see of Hezekiah's competence as a leader? And so for me, I just noted the things that I saw, how he assembled the people, he gathered them, first the priests, then the city officials. He stationed the Levites. He ordered the burnt sacrifice. He ordered taking away the things that would have offended God or been displeasing to him. And he restored the service of the temple. And you'll find that too in our own lives when the priests tell us to write to our MPs, to write to the officials for whatever it is, ending MAID or having systems put in place that help the poor, using our voices, not being afraid. those are the same things that we are being encouraged to do. And if we have the right leaders in place, we can do them. If we have the right kings and queens and priests, because in this passage it does tell us how they obeyed him, how they turned their faces towards the Lord, and how Hezekiah gave them so much. It says in verse 21, they brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 male lambs, 7 male goats, and this was a sin offering for the kingdom and for the sanctuary for Judah. The king commanded the priests, the descendants of Aaron, to offer these on the altar of the Lord. So it comes from the kings, it comes from the ones who are ruling the land. It's the same thing as when we had COVID. The Mass was not put first. Offerings to God were not put first. We were told to close the churches, and the beer stores were kept open, and the LCBO. So we didn't put God first. We were told pray at home, and then we were the ones who pushed for it, the people. We said we want our churches open, we want to receive Holy Communion, we want you to do something so that we can put God first and we can receive the Eucharist. And then because of that pressure, then they slowly put arrangements in place. But we have to notice how these things are applied in our own lives and in our communities. And then the last point is, what benefits of competence did Hezekiah receive personally? What benefits did the people receive? So the benefits for Hezekiah is the respect of his authority, because he gave the orders and they carried them out. They dedicated themselves to the Lord, and they brought 70 bulls, 100 rams, 200 male lambs, all of them for burnt offerings to the Lord. And they made a sacrifice of praise. And what benefits did they get? How did it impact the people of Judah? What benefits did they receive? So the benefits for them, they were able to carry out their priestly duties. They were able to be musicians in the temple. It says in verse 27 that as offering began, singing to the Lord began also, accompanied by trumpets and the instruments of David, king of Israel. They were able to worship, so that's another benefit, while the musicians played and the trumpets sounded. All this continued until the sacrifice of the burnt offerings was completed. So that is a benefit. If we're able to worship, if we're able to praise, if we're able to play music, all those things are things that bring honor to God. And for Hezekiah in 2 Chronicles 31, it's confirmed. It says this is what Hezekiah did throughout Judah, doing what was good and right and faithful before the Lord his God. In everything he undertook in the service of the Lord's temple, in obedience to the law and the commands, he sought his God and worked wholeheartedly, and so he prospered. So it's prosperity for him, and also prosperity for the community, for those who were living there, and restoration of the city because of the orders that he gave. And that prosperity does come about for us from doing God's will and from keeping his laws, dedicating ourselves to the Lord. And even when we go through hard times like this, very, very challenging times, for me, I don't have work, but I have a lot of work that I do at home. I clean my place from top to bottom today. I wash the doors. I clean the bathroom. I took everything out from underneath my sink in preparation for tomorrow. I keep my place clean. So those things are also offerings unto the Lord, because even in the Bible, you'll find that in the New Testament especially, the things that are considered evil, satanic, it's like dirtiness, uncleanliness, cutting yourself, shouting, screaming, going without clothes. All of those things are considered evil. So I give thanks for the blessings I've got and for the way God has prospered me through my knowledge. I'm able to help others. I'm able to go to church. I'm able to worship. And when I do have money, I do give to the church first. I make sure my own needs are taken care of, and my rent, my obligations to the community, but I do give money to the church as well. And I don't think God would say, give me money first and then pay your rent, and if you go and live on the street, that's fine. That would be a complete reversal of his law. So that's how I apply this in my thinking, in my reading the scriptures, and in my answering these questions. And I also played my piano today for almost 2 hours. So that was also nice. And I'm using my candle that I made, my essential oil candle. So I have a lot to be grateful for. And I fasted today. I had some sandwiches for supper, and I'm going to have some corn. So for me, I'm grateful I could be at home today. Being out in minus 30 degrees is not fun, and your extremities can start to freeze very, very quickly. Even yesterday when I went out, I just went to the bakery to check for something, and it was really cold. I had to come back and just put my hands into warm water to make sure that the blood flowed, because you can end up losing your limbs, your fingers and your toes and everything in this weather. I do have socks that I can heat up. I have a jacket I can heat up, but minus 30 is too much. So that's what I did today. I tried to keep a track of what I did, what I can give thanks for, and do my prayers. And now it's a new year, so there's exciting times ahead for those of us who do our advocacy work and our activism. We have lots of work to do. We have lots coming up. And I'm waiting to see where God's going to open that next opportunity for me, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I need to work, and I need to get an income coming in. So I'll leave it at that. And tomorrow I'll do more of my John Maxwell and more of the reading.